Hello everybody! We're going to focus today on the sum product formula. It's a ridiculously powerful formula. We'll start off simple and then we'll make them more difficult as we go. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at our country and then we're going to have a look at our department and then we're going to sum up the value. Yeah, now look, to be fair, this is a formula that you would use sum ifs for, but I'll show you as we go how sum ifs would fail as the formulas get a little bit more complex. Okay, but this will explain how the formulation works. We're going to use USA as a criteria and sports as a criteria, and I've made them in a different color. So in cell G2, what we'll do is we'll start the formula off and I'll talk us through the syntax. All right, so it's equals sum P tab. Okay, so that gives us the finish of the sum product. SUMP tab, and then we start with the second bracket. Now this second bracket is for the criteria that we're going to put inside of this part of the sum product. So our criteria is our range, yeah, and this is quite intuitive. That's our range, where our range is equal to a value. So it actually reads really, really well, where the range between A2 and A10 is equal to cell E2. And I'll just leave the formulas hanging the way they are. So I close my bracket. Now that's the first part of the equation, yeah? Now, if you remember product from primary school, product was the multiplication of numbers. So we use the multiplication symbol to join the first and second elements of this equation. Yeah, so we open another bracket and then we go for the corresponding column. Now these ranges need to be symmetrical, so you can see how I've got them exactly the same length. And where that range is equal to the term sports. Yeah? Now once you've got all of that criteria in, we close our bracket, open another bracket, and then open a final bracket. And then what we want to do is we want to make this sum range identical to the previous two ranges, yeah? So we close our bracket for the sum range and then we close our bracket for the sum product. And it should give us the sum total of 62 and 93. All right, so we press enter, hashtag kaboom. The summation of those two is 155. So we get that appearing in the bottom, yeah? And that's effectively just going 1 0 1 0. So basically it hits USA in the first instance, and I'll just make this a little larger to show you what it's actually doing. So I'll give us another column, insert, and it's saying USA 1, yeah? And it goes to Canada and it goes 0. And then it goes 0 because Mexico is not USA, and then it says 1. And then the rest are zeros, yeah? And then that's for equation 1. I'll just put EQ1. And then for equation 2, it's multiplying out the ones and zeros. So for the first instance, it goes sports 1, and then 0 because clothing does not equal sports, and then 0, and then 1, and then 0, 0, 0. And if this said sports, for example, it would say 1. And then in the next column, what it's doing, Control Z, insert, is it's saying equals 1 multiplied by 1 multiplied by the value. Yeah? And then there's an intuitive addition sign after that. So it's basically taking the array of those ranges and just adding them all together. Yeah, so that's what's happening inside the formula. Now you don't get the assistance. When I click on the FX button, you do not get the help inside here that says, okay, these are each part of the formulation. But you can use the evaluate formula. So under formulas, you can go, okay, let's evaluate the formula, and then just click the evaluate part, and you'll see USA, Canada, Mexico, and if I hit evaluate again, true is the same as 1. So 1, 0, 0, 1, and then zeros for the rest. And then you can evaluate it further and further and further, yeah? So you don't get assistance inside there, but there are tools that you can use to go into it. Okay, so that's our basic sum product formula. Now let's have a look at it in a different context, just a little bit more complex, yeah? So basically now what we want to do is we want to look up USA Sports and Q2. So we're not looking at one column now, we're looking at many columns. Now, this is where some ifs struggles a little bit because it looks at one column with a set of criteria. It looks, unless you nest it, it's only looking at one column at a time, yeah? And that's the way SumIfs was designed. Sumproduct is designed a little bit more dynamically. It's a little bit heavier than SumIfs, but it actually is a bit more flexible as well, yeah? It uses a little bit more weight, but it's fantastic. Okay, so this is where it really comes into its own, yeah? So I'll just delete this formula. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to create a formula that looks at this column, and then these columns, or the criteria across there, and then the sum range through there, yeah? All right, so effectively we'll just add our three criteria, okay? So we'll say equals SUMP tab, open with another bracket for the criteria, yeah? And then we'll use our range down there from A2 to A10, and then we'll say where that is equal to the term USA. I'm just going to leave these formulas hanging because it's just a one-time only formula, yeah? We close our bracket, multiplication joins the sum product criteria, open another bracket, okay? Now we go into this sports criteria, or this department, and then we make sure it's the same length. I might give you an example when the length does not match after this. All right, so we say where that is equal to, rather intuitively, sports, yeah? All right, so we close our bracket, multiplication sign, open another bracket. You can see they're just sets of ranges with criteria inside of brackets, yeah? And now this is where it gets interesting. Now this is where Sumproduct works across columns, okay? So I want all of these columns, so the criteria is from column C1 to F1, yeah, where it's equal to Q2, yeah? So we click into K2. Now that's all of the criteria that we need. So a multiplication sign, open a bracket. Now what we've got to do is I've got to make sure that the range that we're calculating goes symmetrical with the data across here. So see all this guy? And then we make sure it's exactly the same width, yeah? It's the same width, same length, yeah? It needs to be symmetrical. So I close two brackets, yeah? All right? Now what we want is the summation of 65 and 82. So we press enter, boom, we get the summation of these two numbers, 147, popping in there. Now if I was to copy some of this and then just add to it, you see this number grows. We pull the 81 in there as well. Yeah? Now we should be able to say, oh, okay, I want Q4, so we bring Q4 in and it should give us the 109, the 86 and the 67, the 262, yeah? All right. So that's, oh, let me show you how to break it. Okay, so there's two sorts of ways that a formula will break, yeah? So the sum product formula breaks if the range loses its symmetry. So if we say, oh, okay, we're taking it down to there, yeah? Notice I just used the bottom row as a bit of a sort of a holding row, so I can actually add more data just by inserting rows, yeah? So now we press enter, and we get an NA error. Now, NA error means the range, it tends to mean the range is not symmetrical, yeah? So there needs to be symmetry. So if I was just to move these guys down, might need to move that down there, and then move it back up, yeah? Now it's got symmetry, yeah? It doesn't matter about the first row, it will produce a result. Symmetry, it needs symmetry, yeah? Okay, so that's effectively taking it to 3 levels. We showed you 1, now 2, and now 3, yeah? So let's have a look at this equation where we add some operators inside of our formula. So oh, I've left the formula there, let's take it away. So basically what we want to do is we want to look at data to consolidate across columns, and this is where the real power of the formula comes into play. All right, so we're going to look at USA and then sports and then everything up until January 20. All right, so we start with our equals sum product, and then we do the same thing. We say, okay, we want our range to be A2 to A10, where it's equal to USA. Close our bracket, multiplication sign, We move on to the second column, where it's equal to sports. Yeah? Close our bracket, multiplication sign, and then we want the data across the top in the same way. But now we don't want it to be equal to, we want it where it's less than or equal to. And now we point to January 20. They're our three criteria. So it should give us the summation of the 4 columns there and the 4 columns there. Yeah? All right, so we press the multiplication sign, open a final bracket, look for that symmetry. We need the symmetry. And then we close our bracket twice. All right, so it should give us the 4 lines there and the 4 lines there. So we press enter, and what have I done wrong? Let's have a look at the equation. So you can see what I've done wrong. So it's suggesting the wrong answer. So I'll say no. I forgot. I'll say no. Okay. I forgot my bracket just there. Yeah. So all good. So we press enter. 141. What is everything that says USA and sports? Well, I got the month set to January, so it's basically summing the 74 and the 67. So let's change the January to April like I thought it said, and what we get is the 336 and the 277, which is 613. So we can change it so it goes backwards now, March. So now we've only got the first 3 months. This should actually say month. I copied the last template. So it gives us the capacity to move forwards and backwards and give us a year-to-date position that meets these criteria. So hopefully that makes a lot more sense. That's the sum product formula. You can do a lot more than what I've showed you. This is just a basic introduction into what it can actually do. All right, have a great day, everybody.